Chip, not a first question you would expect, I guess, today, but Jackson Rice, how comfort is it to have him back again, and what's he mean to this team?
It's really comforting. I mean, he's obviously, being a Ray Gar Award finalist, one of the top kids in the country, and he drastically changed his field position for us. So, we feel real confident. The other factor that you feel real confident is that your snapper's back too. So it's a combination of the snap punt operation. We obviously got to break a few guys in protection. Losing guys like David Paulson and Terrell Turner and some of those guys that Josh Cadu was on our punt team. Some of those guys trying to fill in some of those guys in the protection standpoint. But when you get a guy back there that's had experience, being a 4-year starter for us, it's pretty comforting in the punt game knowing you got a guy like him back. So.
What's going on with your place kickers in camp?
They're battling every day. We'll do some version of something every day, whether we start from out of stretch with a field goal or two. We're always giving them both a shot. And then we did some field goal pods today where we kicked about 10 field goals. So each guy got 10. So there's about 20 field goals in that period. So they're no different than quarterbacks right now or any other position. We're battling it out, and as we get closer to game week, we'll make a determination on who that's going to be. But they're both look like they're healthy, and it's a good healthy competition. So they push each other, which is good.
What's the difference in Alejandro's leg strength when you're healthy?
Obviously competing with Robbie from a strength standpoint. So unfortunately Robbie was banged up, and Alejandro wasn't. But Alejandro had to go. Robbie couldn't, but Alejandro had to go. So he's kicking the ball better, farther, more explosive coming off his foot, and Robbie's doing the same thing. So it's a good battle going on right now. It's a good situation to be in, I think, because you got two healthy kids that can kick right now. So.
Sort of the dog days of camp right now. It's hot. Is there a point where guys start separating themselves, the ones to the twos, or is there a point or benchmark where you look for the guys?
No, we don't.
I
hope no one separates from anybody, and that means we've all upped our level. Separation comes from two things: either one guy's playing really well, or one guy hits the wall and isn't playing well. So, right now I think these guys have handled it pretty good. So, we started off at a better starting point from a conditioning standpoint since I've been here. So, I think our level's been pretty good, and there hasn't been, at least up until today, there hasn't been anybody that's hit the wall, and there wasn't there anybody today hitting the wall. So, it's how they bounce back. It is starting to get hot. We like it though, but we got to play in it. We played. I talked to him after practice. We played last year at Arizona with 100 degrees at kickoff. We played down in Tennessee and it was boiling at kickoff. I mean, you never know what you're going to get from the temperature standpoint, and you can't let that be a factor. We always feel, that physical fitness is a weapon for us, and we always try to pride ourselves on our conditioning and being able to, really practice well on days like this is the kind of evidence to that. So.
Do you have to provide more water breaks, extra long water breaks?
No, they get water all the time during practice. That's a constant thing. So we don't. If they need it, there's water stations at every position drill. So it's not, one of those where we got to tell them, hey, it's a break. Make sure you break. It's available all throughout practice, and it's always been that way. So.
Coach, at what period do you start working on punt returners, kick returners, start to see you're in one of those guys?
Day one since we've been here. So we got a group of guys. We got DeAnthony, we got Josh Huff, we got Efo, we got Kenyon Barner, Braylon Addison. Our punt return guys. Then you throw in Keenan Lowe and Ryan Jackson. Back there as kick return guys. So we've been doing that since the first day of practice.
Chip, with the receivers, do you sort of look to Josh Huff with his experience level to be maybe one of the leaders of that group?
Yeah, Josh is one of the leaders of that group, and not just because of his experience, but I think because of how he approaches practice every day, how he approaches the weight room every day, in terms of what his approach is. Just time served doesn't always mean you're a good leader. You could be here for a couple of years, but if you're not doing things the right way, then you're obviously not. But it's really what his approach has been. And, he's been real good mentoring the younger guys, and we got a great group. The 3 young guys we got have been on the point and been really, really impressed with all 3 of those guys. Braylon, Dwayne Stanford, and Chance have all been, really, really. I think our whole coaching staff's really pleased with how they've approached things, how much they worked on things on their own, and when they got here, the ultimate compliment is they don't really act like freshmen. So I'm confident how those 3 guys are preparing right now, and I know Josh was a big factor in kind of transitioning those guys over the summertime. So.
Chip, Tony Washington told me that he transformed his body over the summer. He lost a lot of weight. Have you noticed a difference in his body, and has that helped him on the field?
No, I haven't noticed that. I think Tony changed about a year ago, from when I looked at it. I mean, he was the same thing during spring ball. So it's not like he was heavy and too big at the end of spring ball and then it happened over the summer. So I think it's been a yearly thing, but he has changed himself a little bit. He's really fighting for playing time right now, doing a really good job because we recruit him because he's athletic. I think sometimes kids get here and they think they automatically got to get big, but when they get big, they get slow. And Tony has really worked in the last year, to be honest with you. And I have seen it notice over the last year, but I don't think it's just been a single time.
Chip, you watched a lot of tape so far. Here we are at the end of the second week. Are there areas where you'd like to see the team get better? Are there areas that they're excelling in right now?
Yeah, we got to get better in everything. We're not ready to play a game. We've obviously got a schedule that puts us on point for, 2 weeks from this Saturday will be our first game. So I've seen improvement, and I'm happy with that. But we still got a ways to go before we're, a polished unit getting ready to play in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams to get ready to play a football game. We're still, really pushing it from a rep standpoint, pushing it from, getting guys in the field and just getting tape you can teach off of, because every day in practice there's teachable moments, things that haven't come up. And, we had a situation that just finished in our overtime game that came up, and unless you practice it, couldn't have been scripted, but it happened. We had to learn from it, and then the other team came back and scored because we made mistakes.
What was that? What was the situation?
The field goal was blocked, and the other team ran on the field and started celebrating while the ball was rolling around on the ground. So they all thought that game was over. The game isn't over. The ball's right there. The play's still in play. You guys had too many men on the field, moved the ball up. The other team came back on the field and scored a touchdown. They lost in overtime. But it's a teachable moment. If you don't have that happen, you can talk about it in a meeting and then say, hey, if it ever happens in a game, there was one night back in August that I talked about it, but until those guys are in that scenario. And literally, Brian Jackson had a great jump and blocked the field goal, but a half a second after he blocked it, the entire team thought they won. They're on the field and not giving anybody an opportunity, so that's a penalty. So those guys thought they're celebrating. Like, you're not. We moved the ball 10 yards, and then the other team scored a touchdown, and they lost because it was a 3-point game at the time. If they had hit the field goal, we would have gone to another overtime. But those are just situations that you can't script, and when they come up, you can use them, and we got tape to show them, and we can talk about that. Sometimes you love kids playing with emotions, and we can't lose our mind because the game's still going on. We've got to get somebody to return to recover.
What were you working on today? Was it mostly the overtime stuff? Or
no, we work on everything. That's just one segment. We had third and medium, third and long. We had an opportunity where we had 12-play drives on offense, or one stayed out for 12 plays, two stayed out for 12 plays, three stayed out for 12 plays, but the defense switched every 4 plays, so they could get a little bit more fatigue. We had some 3-on-2 situations. We had some coming out situations. So every period is scripted to be a little bit different thing. We just finished with an overtime and tried to cover all things where we actually have captains come on the field and take the coin toss and what do you want to be? You obviously want to be on defense first, but when it's a kid's first time out there, you got to let them make the decision because you can't be out there making it. So a couple different scenarios for us to work on, but they did a good job of it. So.
How nice is that to have, something random like that, something you obviously can't script in that?
Yeah, that's the good part about, going through this and then being able to come off the field, evaluate the tape, and then really spend some time talking about it in the meeting tonight because the game's all situations, and our job as coaches is to prepare them for everything, but it's not just by talking about it, it's about actually trying to put them into it and practice, and we got an opportunity today to do a real teachable moment for those guys, and hopefully, we can look back at us if it ever happens this season. Hey, we talked about this in August, actually went through it and had this situation happen, so we'll see. Hopefully they learn.